In this week's devlog, I added destinations for conveyor items to go to, such as splitters and mergers, and also fixed a lot of bugs. A lot of bugs. Hey folks, my name's Steve and welcome to the 7th devlog for Project Hestia, a base building automation strategy game that I'm working on in my spare time. One of the things that I've been working on this week is to attach two existing conveyor belts together. So as you can see, I've got one conveyor belt with items here, and then I can create another belt here. And when I link them together, now all the items copy from the first conveyor belt onto the merged conveyor belt, and it all acts as one contiguous line. And that took a little bit of time, and there was quite a few bugs in it to iron out. It's not 100% yet, there's still a few visual artifacts and a couple of glitches here and there. But it's definitely a lot more stable than it was. After that, I worked on getting it connected up to destinations. So I've got these things here that I call item sinks, but at the moment they're just basically inventory or storage. So this one's filling up with iron and this one's filling up with copper. As you can see, they're connected to the miners using the conveyors. And yeah, they're fairly simple, but it shows off the connection system on the other end. So this allows me to now connect up splitters here and mergers, and now we've got the item sinks, and have a bit more of a process flow going. So occasionally there's a little bug that occasionally conveyors will get blocked. I don't know why, so that's something for me to look into next week. But as you can see, you've got a nice little flow going here. And also, if I remove this guy here, oh, I added deleting of conveyors and buildings as well as a little side thing. So now if I get an assembler and put him here, and then link this conveyor to the assembler like this, just wait for a few to go in. Now I can have items coming out the assembler. At the moment, the assembler kind of fakes things a little bit because it's not really checking what items it's receiving. It's just outputting items based on what the recipe set is. But as you can see, we've got splitters, we've got mergers, we've got assemblers and storage. So that's the basic building blocks for all the things I need in the factory. This week I wanted to go into a little bit more detail and go into how things work under the hood. So if you get overwhelmed by technical stuff, then this is probably going to be less interesting to you, but if you like this kind of detail, then great. So in Unity I've got a prefab which represents my assembler, and what I can do on this is for each building I can say what attachments they have. So this one has one input and one output, and they are created using this attachment authoring script, and that allows me to say which direction they're in and also rotate them so the buildings can have attachments that point in any direction. And they also say which inventory this attachment goes into. So this green one, the in goes into inventory 0 and the out comes out of inventory 1. So I also have on this, I have inventories. So this building has two inventories, an input inventory and an output inventory. And they say how many items that they allow as a max. This one's quite high at the moment. And then also on buildings I have another script that says what kind of building they are. So this is an item processor, and it has a recipe which is creating processed iron. So a recipe will be what ingredients they take in and what outputs they have and the amount and some basic craft time. So then if I go and look at the splitter, for example, and click on that, and then we can see that the splitter has 3 attachments and 3 inventories. So if I open the attachment authoring, so I can say that it has one input and two outputs, and then three inventories, one inventory per attachment. I'm using Unity Dots and Unity ECS, which is the entity component system. So when I create things in my game, it becomes a list of entities, which basically means an entity is a holder for a bunch of components, and a bunch of components are all the little bits of data that corresponds to that. So for example, if I go onto, so I've got my item splitters, and then I've got two, so in this game I've got two splitters, so I've got two entities that correspond to these. So these buildings are the entities, and then on that entity I've got a bunch of components that say things about them. So for example, I've got building placement constraints that say that they're on a foundation or they're lying on a flat surface, or like what they can be placed on. Then I've got building placement info that says what they're currently placed on, and then I've got the linked attachments. So each attachment becomes a separate entity, and then the linked inventories, and each inventory is a separate entity. So what I can do is, if I go and look at all the things in the world, so that you can see that there's a bunch of inventories that correspond to the splitters, and we also have we've got a bunch of attachments as well in the world. These are all invisible, they're just background data. And then what this allows me to do is that I have various systems that go and run, and this is the S in system. So we've got ECS stands for the entities, the components, and then the systems. And the systems are basically, they take in a bunch of components and they update a bunch of components. And that allows all the functionality in the game. So I've got an item splitter system that looks at all the splitters in the game and basically takes in the items and then places them out in inventories again. And I've also got, so I've got conveyor systems. So I've got a whole bunch of conveyor systems. So I've got a system for adding, moving, rendering, and this is how the game is built up. So to stop me from getting completely lost, I've created an architectural diagram that explains how all the mining and the storage and the conveyor belts all interact with each other. So I've got the systems here, I've got the entities, which are the boxes, and then the components, which are the blue boxes within the grey boxes. And as you can see, I've got a miner here, and then I've got an attached conveyor, I've got an assembler, another conveyor, and storage. And each building will have an inventory, so they have an inventory item array. Buildings that have multiple inventories will have separate entities per inventory, and then each building that can attach something will have a number of attachment entities, and conveyor belts link up to these attachment entities. And then I have systems that then will go through, look at the entities, and then update other entities based on that. So we've got the resource gathering system, which after a certain period of time will add items to the resource gatherer inventory. Then that gets moved from that inventory by the conveyor add system, which takes out from this and goes into this. Then we have the conveyor item move system that basically moves conveyor items. The item transfer system that moves a conveyor item from the conveyor to an input. So any input entity. So it looks at the attachments that have inputs and transfers them across. Then we've got an item processing system that looks at all the inventories and entities associated with the item processor. And then we've got another set of add system, move system, transfer system to get it over to the other side. So yeah, this diagram has made me a little bit more sane, so at least I can look at it all at once, because otherwise lives in code or lives at the back of my brain. So this helps me to understand it a little bit. And hopefully that makes some sense to you, or hasn't overwhelmed you completely. And then in-game, this corresponds to, we've got a conveyor item move system that works on all the conveyors in the game, and then we'll update their positions. So that's been a bit of a deep dive. I hope I haven't lost too many of you. And that's everything for this week. We've hit 100 subscribers, so I'm really happy about that. And thank you all for watching. And yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, all those things if you haven't already. And I'll see you next week.